Hello and welcome to the Federal. Today we have with us TM Krishna, a voice which has rendered some beautiful Carnatic music and a voice which has become a voice of protest and dissent. Hello Mr. Krishna.
Hello.
Do you think being a Brahmin has empowered you to give a voice against the community and it has made people sit up and listen to you? Do you think your voice has got more traction from those who belong from inside the community?
Well, let's first understand caste, right? The fact of the matter is that when a Brahmin rejects caste, it's an ideological position, it's an intellectual position, it's an emotional position. But the fact is, the benefit of being a Brahmin, the benefit of the access that I get because I'm a Brahmin, the cultural, within quotes, acceptability, respect, all that I get will never go away from my life. So, I think we upper castes cannot make a bravado of being against caste. I want to say that straight. So, therefore, it's important for upper caste people to realize that taking a position against caste, against the Brahminical idea is not something to pat our backs about. It is a self-realization process. Therefore, it's an inner awakening, but that doesn't ever take away the benefit for all my life. Therefore, I should keep that in mind when I speak about caste. It's a privilege that, and it's a danger, and it is something I have to be very careful and conscious about. And exactly because I have the privilege of being upper caste is why I'm listened to. You see, that's the way the double whammy happens, right? So the only reason people are listening to me, or the only reason people shout and are angry with me, is because I have privilege. Is because I'm an insider, because I'm a Brahmin, because I'm an upper caste person who's saying all this is bunkum and rubbish. And that is why you would pay attention to me. Isn't that still problematic? It shouldn't be that way. You should pay attention to the people who truly are affected by caste, who are truly affected by oppression of every sort, economic, social, cultural, religious. But we upper castes don't pay attention to those real voices. So unfortunately, my privilege is the reason why people respond to me. So this is the complex mess.
Do you think that then you trying to say that the voices from the marginalized are not heard, or you are heard more? What?
That's the truth. The fact of the matter is, among the upper caste community, the elite community, the cultural elite, the fact is that unfortunately my voice is heard more, which is why when I'm critiqued by many times, by the way, by Dalit community members and people working in caste, that my presence is also a problem. And I think there is some truth to it. There is some truth to the fact that me giving voice also means somebody's voice is not heard, right? At the same time, to then say that people like me have no business engaging with this is also problematic. So I think it's a fence walk. It's a very delicate fence walk, and I think it's important that we are kept in check. I think it's very important that people like me are kept in check. People like me are criticized. People like me are questioned. And always reminded that you cannot, in the name of fighting caste, take away the voice of the people who really need to be listened to. So we have to be facilitators of it, or sometimes just get into the background and listen. Just like they say in gender, the job of the man is to listen. In caste, the job of the upper caste is also to listen.
This is a process which has been happening for centuries in the country. How different, what is the difference you're going to bring to it?
I don't know. I mean, if you ask me for a solution, I don't have a solution. I can just say that the only thing where I think I can participate actively is looking at culture with more dynamism. And when I say culture, cultural habits, cultural practice and art, I think one thing that has not been thought of actively as shall we say a bridge, a catalyst for bringing conversation, contestation, disagreement and realization is art and culture. In this country, I don't think we've really had political ideologies or political ideas that have really used it. I mean, if you look at the way the left have used art, they've used art like a propaganda tool. similar to the Dravidian movement. I'm not even talking about that. I'm saying there is so much art and culture in different communities. Can the experience of that, can the bridges created between that, can common platforms, can the subversion of space, subversion of ideas, find a way by which people start relating to each other, understanding each other, disagreeing with each other. So I think I'm not saying that I'm saying anything new. I just think that there is a great possibility for culture and art to be a far more active, far more robust participant in this discourse of caste or gender discrimination. And that is something I think in this country we have not really explored seriously. I'm not talking about using it as a tool. I'm talking about allowing it to spread, allowing it to talk by itself. And I'm talking about tradition. I'm talking about traditional practices. I'm talking about things that happen in villages, in towns, in communities, among caste groups. See, art itself to a large extent is also caste limited. You can almost identify art forms within caste groups. So maybe the tool way to understand different groups is the art then, because that's the way I understand the world. Truth is, that's truth. I understand the world through art, through sound, through light, through movement. So that's the only thing I can bring on to the table is that possibility.
So your attempt to use culture and art as a vehicle for social change, these two very concepts are under attack the most in recent times.
Yeah.
So that makes, besides being a forward caste person, who's a Brahmin who's getting into this conversation, that also you are under attack, and the concept of art and culture, that is under tremendous attack under the current political climate. How do you think you will work around this?
First of all, I think, truth be told, historically from independence, I think this country has done great disservice to the idea of diversity. I think that is important to state. We keep talking about diversity, talking about the different languages in this country and all that, yes. But the truth is the majority narrative of what Indian culture is, or Indian art is, has been driven by upper caste ideas in this country. Let's be very honest to first acknowledge that, irrespective of who is in power, it has been an upper caste notion of Indian culture. So this feeds directly and conveniently to the present dispensation and the BJP and the RSS and the VHP. So in fact, the fodder is already there, okay, and they know to manipulate it and use it in a way that nobody else knows. So everything that they are saying about Indian art and culture is casteist. It's patriarchal, and that's what they want. Let's be very clear. And everything that I hope to engage in is to subvert every one of those structures. So there is going to be a conflict there. To them, Carnatic music is an emblem of India in its present idea. For me, no, it is not. It's one little speck in the possibility we call India. So it is important, I think, that in fact, let me put it this way, in such a juncture when homogeneity is what is being sought by Mr. Narendra Modi's government and all his stooges across the country, it's important that an active puncturing of every one of these very problematic and dangerous notions happens. And I do hope I can puncture a few of them.
See, inclusivity of music was something which has been happening in Carnatic music and Indian culture music scene for a long time. It has been tried and tested. So why do you want to attempt it again?
First of all, it's not inclusive. Who told you? That's a lie. Big bogus. If you think that Indian upper caste culture or upper elite classical culture has been inclusive, we are lying to ourselves. Now, I'm even shocked when people tell me this. I feel like telling them, go to an auditorium and do a caste check if you want. Look at the lists of concerts that happen and tell me what caste groups you find. And you know, it's very interesting. For the upper caste person, there's only two castes. Let me restructure the statement. For a Brahmin, there's only two castes, Brahmin and non-Brahmin. That itself is such a dangerous position to take, right? You have completely conflated the diversity of people in one word, and you're the only other. Isn't that itself structurally problematic? Now, to your question, has there been inclusivity? No. Now, the fact is that all classical cultures have in their very nature been either racist, casteist, or colorblind and patriarchal, all across the globe. This is not unique of this country. When people, in order to counter my argument, start naming 4 or 5 musicians who are not in the Brahmin community, not for a moment are they thinking about what all those people had to do even to get acceptability. Not for a moment are they going and having a conversation once with a Tamil Vidwan or Nadaswara Vidwan in private and saying, is it easy for you? Not once. Yet you just pat yourself on your back and say, look, of course there are so many people of the caste, look, I have allowed them. That's so honestly disgusting. So sometimes I don't know what to say. Honestly, at times I'm baffled. I'm saying you don't need to even accept my way of looking at it or my approach to it. But to be in denial that there is casteism in classical art in India is to me baffling. That how can you even say, this is like saying there is no gender inequality in India. Why? We've had prime ministers who are women, we've had chief ministers women, we have CEOs women, CFOs women, so there's no gender problem at all. Every corporate house is absolutely equal because you have CEOs. This is exactly like that, right? What have these women had to do to fight off the patriarchy and the male dominations in every one of these structures? We never look. So we are not inclusive. And I want to reframe that word, inclusive is always a very kind of a tricky word, because somewhere in inclusivity there seems to be an act of, for me, in the sound of the word, it's my interpretation. In the sound of the word, there's almost an act of, condescension, and I'm being inclusive, as if I'm doing somebody a favor. It's not. Inclusivity is the absence of exclusivity. That's all.
So taking that forward, do you think that I've never seen a Muslim Carnatic musician, whereas in Hindustani there are more. Are they more acceptable or
so we have
less caste regimented?
No. Let's be very careful here. First, there have been very few Muslim musicians in Carnatic music. Nadaswara Vidwan, for example, Sheikh Chinna Maulana, his children. Now there is, of course, Mehbooba, and there are a few. Other than that, very few. We know, for example, that Kunnakudi Mastan Sahib, a Sufi saint from this city of Chennai, his dargah is in Tondiarpet, that area, has composed in Carnatic tunes. Those tunes are not known to us. Some are being sung by, in fact, one very elderly musician called Abu Bakr, who lives in Chennai. He sings some of them in many of these ragas. Other than that, we know of hardly any. Now this is where we be careful. The immediate comparison with Hindustani music. Now, the battle against the Hindustani Muslim musician was identical to the battle against the Isai Vellalar, Nadaswara Vidwan and the Devadasis of the south. Mr. Bhatkande and Paluskar ran a battle to reclaim, within quotes, Indian art and culture from the Muslims. Just like in the south, the upper caste Brahmins wanted to reclaim the purity of South Indian Carnatic music from the Devadasis and the Isai Vellalar. So in a way, there is a mirroring happening. Also, caste doesn't disappear because your religion is something else. So let's be very careful about caste. Muslims are also casteist. Christians are also casteist. Hindus also casteist. Okay. So we have to be very careful. Therefore, if the acceptability of Muslims within especially the Khyal domain, Drupad also, has also been largely because there's been history of a lot of the Muslim gharanas evolved from the courts. But if you're going to actually look at the last 30 years of Hindustani Khyal music, all the singers are more and more Maharashtrian Brahmins. So you have to ask yourself, where are the singers from the Muslim community? Now, there are few, I'm not saying there are few, but to a large extent, it's moved to upper caste Maharashtrian domains. So what has happened there? Whereas in instrumental music, you still have some of the Muslim Islamic musicians participating. In vocal music there seems to be a very clear shift. So to say there is no casteism in Hindustani music is definitely a lie. To say there is no discrimination is also a lie. Why it feels that way is because the religiosity in Carnatic music is right there at your face. And because that religiosity is not there at your face in Hindustani music, there is a feeling of it being less casteist and less religious. But the notion of Indian Hindu spirituality and the acceptance of that by everybody, irrespective of your belief system, is as much a pressure in Hindustani music as it is in Carnatic music.
Music in recent times has, not in recent times also, music has a very close connection with the environment, social movement, political upheavals across the world. And in recent times we have seen songs like Hum Dekhenge, which
it was incredible.
The current generation.
And there's a Kannada version now of it too.
The millennials have never heard about it. It's not that popular even among my generation. So, what is your take on this? How is music so connected with social movements?
I think we have to, if you look at, there are two parts. One is that if you look at art and protest, in general in society, whether it's the African American story or whether it's the Dalit story or whether it's the story of women, it's usually the marginalized sections of society who have always raised their voice, first of all. Okay? Because they had to be heard. If you had to be heard, you had to raise your voice, you had no choice. And they are the ones who have used art and music in the most beautiful manner. So the credit for being creative artistically in the political voice goes to the marginalized. Okay? And I think coming from that you have had even genres evolving. That's what's most fascinating. The hip hop movement, jazz are all some way come out from the marginalized, giving themselves aesthetic and political voice. So gospel music is another classic. It's entrenched in religion, but it's also it's almost like the bhakti movement in some way, right? It's like a demand of saying, I own God. Who the hell are you to tell me? God is mine. That's how different is it from the bhakti movement here when Tukaram said this or when Andal said this. I'll embrace him and give him a kiss. He's my lover. So you see all this coming generally from communities and individuals who belong to parts of societies that need to raise your voice. They're the most creative parts of society. So I think it is wonderful that we are seeing the middle class young boys and girls today also participating in that creative process. The left movement have also used it. We can't forget that the left to a large extent has used music, but they use it directly like tools, you know what I mean, like directly like songs for certain causes, certain movements, messaging, etc. Tamil Nadu has another whole unique culture. The whole idea of Tamil cinema is born only because of politics. It's a fascinating thing. The whole notion of Tamil cinema is political. If there was no Dravidian movement, you won't have an idea of Tamil cinema identity. So I think Tamil Nadu is also very unique in that sense. Politics has influenced cinema, whether it's Bengal or whether it's Maharashtra, yes, but nothing like this, where in Tamil Nadu, the entire modern notion of cinema making, acting, storytelling came because of a socio-political movement. So there is interconnectivity is always there. I think it's also a question of how you use it. We use it overtly, very literally, whether it is going to be subversive, whether it's going to be something that tells you a side story. So there's so many possibilities, which is why I think fundamentally we all know that, I say this 100 times, I'll say it again, the only reason we will change is because we feel, not because we understand. And I think that's why art is so important, because it makes you feel.
Today you have written a letter, open letter, with former Justice Chalameshwar and Adur, telling that there is a serious threat, former CEC, telling that there is a serious threat and it's time for us to look at what the Constitution is at the 70th anniversary. What are the threats you think the Constitution is facing at this point of time?
I think it's the entire spirit of the Indian Constitution. The Indian Constitution is an incredible piece of work. It's not perfect, but it's done by human beings. If it's perfect, there's something, there's, utopia is a fraud, right? We all know that. Similarly, if it was perfect, there's a problem. It's always going to be work in progress. It's always going to be something that we need to re-look at. But the essence of it, the heart of it, the spirit of it is absolutely astounding. I mean, every idea of ethical living, of being part of not just the human species, but being part of an idea of the world, an ecosystem with so many different beings, is encapsulated in the idea of the Constitution. And I think I look at the Constitution as a cultural document. I mean, we talk about so many things of the idea of India. I think that the Constitution gives us that idea. It also sieves all the ugliness out. It tells us there is so much ugliness in us. You know, we have to make sure we don't retain that ugliness. So it is a document of reality and a document of hope. We are now faced at a threat of saying that that document itself doesn't represent us. We're being told that. We're being told that the document is not India. And a very important wedge is being placed. The wedge is being placed between the idea of a democratic, independent India and a civilizational India. This is done purposely by the RSS, BJP and their cahoots. It's done purposely. They want to say that the old, ancient, religious Hindu India is a far more superior idea, a far more evolved notion than the idea of the modern, democratic, liberal India. And this is a fraud wedge. It doesn't exist. The Constitution has taken into account in its spirit every possibility of the past. But what the Constitution has done, and which they do not like, is also question the past. And its questioning has come in the way it has embedded certain value systems in its being. And the moment you accept that value system, you have to question that past. None of these people want that past question. They want a casteist, upper caste India. They want a patriarchal India. They want an India that rejects every other religion. They want an India that says that if you are Muslim but in India you have to accept originally you are Hindu. Now every one of this is challenged by the Constitution, and therefore they are placing this wedge in between, saying we are much greater before, and therefore everything that's happened from 1947 is somehow not India. It's been forced upon you. We have to fight this tooth and nail. We have to fight this tooth and nail, because our Constitution is about humanity. It's about trying to be, very simply put, a good person. I mean, very simply put, that's the most difficult thing to be. And we have a framework for it. I mean, it's astounding. I mean, I get goosebumps now I'm talking to you. I'm getting goosebumps talking to you. I mean, just think of it, it's such a beautiful idea. And if that's under challenge and being threatened, how can you keep quiet? So we are pushed to a position, and I would say pushed, where we have to reclaim things. We have to reclaim days, we have to reclaim words, we have to reclaim people. If we don't know tomorrow what we will be told. And in this modern new world where messaging happens like that, we have to be always on the watch. And I think the letter that we co-signed today is an appeal to all of us, saying January is an important month. Netaji is important to this country. Ambedkar is so important for this country, and Gandhi is. And the three of them didn't necessarily agree with each other. But isn't that the beauty? We need to reclaim that inner spirit, and it's directly under threat. Let's not lie at least about it.
The thing is that the Constitution itself provides for so many ways for itself to be amended. Earlier under the Congress, till the 50s, and now we are seeing the NDA ruling now. They are doing things, amending Constitution under what rules it's been written about. You know, they are not doing anything out of the book. So in case like this, where brute majorities are there ruling the country, amending a constitution is not a big deal anymore. So, do you see that as a bigger threat?
Well, I think Ambedkar said something to that effect, if I'm paraphrasing, I could be wrong, that the constitution is just a piece of paper. It depends on the people who are in government, who are governing, something to that effect. I think that's probably says it all. You can have 100 things written in a piece of paper. You can have 15 checks and balances. There's always going to be a way by which you can circumvent it, by which you can use brute force. Therefore, I think let's go back and think why is this happening. I think there is a problem in all of us as citizens. I think that's something also we have to reflect upon. I don't think we really understand rights. I don't think in this country we understand what rights are. I mean, I'm just going to compare it to the States. Every child knows their rights. They are taught in school. We seem to be a society of favors, We are used to favors being done by somebody. So it's a feudal mindset. So in a psyche which is feudal, in a cultural habituation where we have done nothing and we are all at fault for it, which is why I said it's a cultural document. We have not recognized it that change has to be only cultural. Have we sung about the constitution ever as a schoolboy? No. Have we talk, I keep saying, we talk about secularism. Honestly, who understands that word? It's an abstract idea. If you say secularism, what does anybody understand by it? So, why didn't we sing songs when we were in school? Why didn't we pray? Why didn't we put a condition that every school must have a prayer that celebrates every religion? We want to be putting the national anthem in a cinema theatre. That seems our priority. So my point is, we as a society are entirely undemocratic. So you have a social setup that is so undemocratic, that is so feudal. How can you expect notions of democracy to actually pervade the governance model? The smarter you are, the cleverer you are, more brute majority you have, you're going to just oppress more. This is a wake-up call for us. That being a citizen is not about going and voting. Being a citizen is understanding your rights. To be able to go and stand and protest is not permission seeking, is not disruptive to the traffic of the day. It is the right of the citizen to ask a question. In Tamil days, they have this word, "Unakku in the bumble." Right? That's how we work. So we need a cultural transformation. So it's going to take a decade, 2 decades. But again, unless we take this juncture to think way ahead, it's a cycle. We're going to fall back into this trap, irrespective of who's in power. I mean, which government is in power doesn't matter, right? So we have to think of changing the way we view our own identities, our collectives in society, of making rights a cultural being, making notions of equality something that is cultural. We have to change the whole education system.
Yeah, coming to the topic of intolerance, there was a author whose book was pulled out of the Chennai book fair.
I read about it, yes.
Yeah. And do you think there's a level of intolerance is rising in a state like Tamil Nadu too? And a book which has been pulled out of the display, there's no ban on the book. If there's a ban, it's okay for a book to be pulled out.
I think that's the whole thing, no? The facade of democracy allows you to do all these things, still claim democracy. People many times ask, you are speaking so much, where are you saying that you are being stopped? Isn't this democracy? You don't understand that in a democratic setup, fear or the implanting of fear is the most dangerous tool, and that's what's being used here. So I think this whole idea of banning books or removing books, not willing to listen to the words of a writer, are all just symptoms of definitely a authoritarian and more authoritarian state. But Tamil Nadu is not new, it's not new to Tamil Nadu. When Jayalalitha was in power, we saw, most of us wouldn't talk. It's the truth, right? We wouldn't talk because we were scared. Let's be very, very clear and honest, at least today after.
That was my next question.
Yeah, that's the truth. That's the truth, because it was terrorizing. You were scared. When Kovan, the singer, nobody cared about Kovan when he was attacked for making the Ghana song. So the fact is that we are an intolerant society, and the intolerance is without doubt increasing. And it's increasing in a very more dangerous way. I'll tell you why. One is a chief minister or a certain party, and that party functioning module attacking somebody or an individual or a book. Now it's become a freelance operation. Anybody, anywhere can beat up anybody without asking anybody. So what they have done systematically is they have spread this kind of fear and this kind of anger and hate all over, that they can never be held responsible for it. Anybody can go and beat up anybody. I mean, when so many Dalits were beaten up because they were carrying beef, what organization did they belong to? They'll just say those some fringe elements. That's a favorite word now, right? A fringe element. But you create so many fringes, which is what is happening now. So you have so many people across just willing to go and say, I hate you, I will hate you. And they don't need to have any affiliation. Now this is when it becomes even more dangerous, when everybody can do it out of free will and nobody can be held responsible for it. The level of fear that puts in the mind of citizens is massive. And again I stress, especially among those who don't have a camera sitting in front and you're not interviewing.
What are you? Are you a patriot, or a nationalist, or a urban Naxal?
So till about recently, I didn't like. I mean, in terms of philosophically.
And the new term called urban Nazi. Also.
Yeah, urban Nazi, urban Naxal, pseudo secular. I've lost track now. So till recently, I never liked the words. I problematized the word nationalist and patriot because I felt that they need to be looked at very carefully. But I've changed my position. I want to reclaim the words now. I want to say I am a nationalist. I want to say I'm a patriot, and I feel it's important that we don't run away from those words. We can intellectually argue about them, but that's for another day and another time. I've changed my position. I'm going to say proclaim I'm a nationalist, I'm a patriot, because otherwise the idea of being a patriot is itself being completely twisted and manipulated. A patriot is now becoming a person who hates people. A patriot is becoming a person who says, you can't come into my country. A patriot is a person who says that I will ask you for your grandfather's or great-great-grandfather's ID card to prove you're Indian. A patriot is somebody who just beats and sings the national anthem in the cinema theatre. A patriot is somebody who hates anybody asking questions. Now, if that's what they're going to make patriots to be, no, I'm going to stand up and say, no, I'm not that. I'm not any of that, but I am a patriot. I am a nationalist.
We hope that too, Mr. Krishna. It was a pleasure having you here.
Thank you very much.
Thanks
Lovely
a lot.
talking to you. Such a pleasure.
Thank
Thanks
you.
a ton.